Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by
At Villeries Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villeries provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villeries Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We are live from our Pontchartrain Production Studios, and tonight we have another great show in store for you. We'll cover all the home teams, the New Orleans Saints, the New Orleans Pelicans, the LSU Tigers, and the Tulane Green Wave. Also, as always, a great panel. Tonight, Gus Kattengell, ESPN 100.3, and Chris Hagan of Fox 8 Sports join us on the show. Gentlemen, welcome to the show as always. Good to have both you gentlemen back. We always like to start off telling the folks a little bit about what you guys got going in your professional lives. And Gus, as always, you're a pretty busy guy.
I kind of feel like I was on cruise control on the way over here, guys. I just kept going down Earhart and like going to the arena for another Pelicans game and realized I had to take a left and come back. Obviously, being in the station of the Pelicans, it's been fun, and I think we might talk about what took place earlier this week. So, yeah, that's fun. And then obviously doing Tulane basketball. They started out 6-0 in conference play, so I know Coach Stockton's excited. Baseball's around the corner, and I'll be helping out Andrew with that. So
beautiful. It's
a busy time, but it's fun. Right. I love sports.
Right. And y'all have, as you mentioned, you guys are not just again broadcasting the games, but you're doing some shows before the game as well, right?
Yeah, Pelicans walkthrough on home games outside section 104, 103. Stop on by. You can't miss us. We got a table on the banner that says ESPN. Spare headset, little mic if you want to come and give your opinion. We always start out with Todd and Daniel, part of the broadcast team, and then we get into it with a member of the media if we can get Chris or anybody. But y'all are doing live shots around that time, 6 to 6:30. So, but it's always fun. Stop on in.
Yeah, for sure. Chris, welcome back. Look, I don't want to say that things have slowed down for you a little bit, but things have slowed down for you a little bit, right?
Slightly, a little bit. You wouldn't be able to tell by my voice. I'm still losing that. We're on the air so much, but no, we don't have the game plan shows, although we will have a Super Bowl game plan show coming up next week. But we do still have the overtime show that's on Tuesday nights. Eventually it'll switch back to Thursdays after the Super Bowl. The final play on Sunday nights. No more high school football, obviously. I think we were still doing that last time I was on the show. But as always, the final play app, the Tiger Huddle app, it was obviously a big time for the Tigers and the Saints until football season for our local teams came to an end. But on the Tiger Huddle app, we'll still have basketball, baseball, media days actually tomorrow for LSU. So we'll get all that stuff fired up, and really we get back into, it's not football season, but it's baseball, basketball, and a number of other things. And obviously we'll be very locked in on the Pelicans this year.
Yeah, no doubt. And of course, LSU basketball playing pretty well right now as well. And you can always get that on the great apps they have over at Fox 8. Let's talk a little Pelicans. Let's start what happened last night. Pelicans lose to the Spurs 121-117. They're in the 12th place in the West now. They're 5 games back in the loss column. 17-28 overall. They're 11-6 over their last 17 games. And last night, especially in the fourth quarter, was one for the ages with Zion going off. In a 3 minute and 8 second span in the fourth quarter, 17 consecutive points, 4 for 4 from the 3-point line, and of course he finished with 22 points, 8 for 11 from the field, 4 for 4 from 3-point line, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, and 5 turnovers. For those that didn't get a chance to watch the game, it was about the 5:23 mark of the fourth quarter when Alvin Gentry called timeout, and at that point the medical staff made the decision that Zion looked like he was fatigued, and they put him on the bench. And of course, the Pelicans went on to lose that game. It was a little different scenario based on what the Pelicans have done recently. Look, they had 21 threes they hit against Memphis on Monday night. Last night they couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. Everybody was struggling from the outside. And of course, I didn't think they got very favorable calls for Derek Favors going up against Aldridge as well. That evened out a little bit in the fourth quarter, but by that time, obviously Favors was in foul trouble. And of course, anytime he goes to the bench for a long length of time, it's hard for him to kind of get going again. I have a very strong opinion on what happened last night in terms of sitting down Zion. I understand the plan. I understand what they're trying to do in terms of, again, limiting his minutes, trying to ease him back in the NBA, especially, again, after, 14 weeks out after the injury and then the surgery that followed. I would have brought him out, let him get his second win, and I would have put him back in the game last night to finish the game out. David Griffin came out, said the buck stops with him. He's the one that ultimately made the decision, along with Aaron Nelson, the medical staff. Also, again, Alvin Gentry was lamenting the opportunity to not have him at the game late. And again, he took a lot of heat from me early, but because I think you have to be coaching in the moment. But with that said, I'm of the opinion I would have played him, and I will also say I don't think you can play him in the 4-minute spurts that they're thinking about doing now. I'm hoping they'll expand that. We'd like to go to our guests now and see what you guys have to say. I think I'm in the minority of most people in the media. I think most people in the fans feel the same way I do, but I think most media members realize what Griff is trying to do, what Aaron Nelson is trying to do, and that they're going to stick to their plan. Gus, I'd like to turn it over to you and then to Chris. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts about last night?
Right.
How he played? More importantly, should he have stayed in the game?
I think the way I addressed it today was this. It was one of those moments, and I used an analogy. It reminded me, different level, of course, but it reminded me of the Gleason block punt. And I used that analogy in this aspect of it. That moment was an expulsion of energy for the city for one reason or another, right? Tired of insurance companies, tired of blue tarps, the works, the reopening of the dome. Again, different level. But that block punt was a block punt. But that block punt, people were crying. It was tearing. You had so much pent-up energy, frustration, emotion, and then finally happiness. And it just let out. I think that's why we remember that moment so much. It was a block punt in the 4th game of the season. Right. Why was it so special? It was because of the things surrounding it. When Zion hit that 4-3, you got lost in the moment. We were all fans. There's a reason we do what we do, right? We love that. So for weeks, for months, a year coming this January 28th, we heard a guy say he's done all he could here, that we're not good enough. And in New Orleans, we don't like that.
Sure.
So since that time, all we heard was national media after national media after national media bash us. No one will come here. Why do you want to come here? You're not going to win. Draft lottery happens. New Orleans wins it. Well, too bad. He's going to waste away there. Don't worry. He'll go somewhere in 5 years. He's never signing a contract there. We draft him. He cries. Well, that's okay. Well, he's not going to be any good all of a sudden. Then, he's fat. His body. I mean, it's one thing after another. Guy hadn't played a minute. And going into that game on Wednesday, I'm watching the national shows in the morning, telling me how he's going to be injury prone. He's Greg Oden. Now, he hadn't had a history of that,
True.
But they're convinced. Ja Morant will have a better career. Pelicans will never make the playoffs, and he's leaving, and you can't win. I think, Eric, when that happened, the arena exploded. You mentioned there were 6 minutes left in the 4th quarter. No one was sitting.
Right.
That doesn't happen. I mean, that's not even a playoff game. It was a Wednesday game. 2 million people watched that game. 88% ratings hike from a comparable game a year ago. I guess what I'm trying to say is you lived in that moment. Of course you didn't want him to sit down.
Right.
I think we all did want him to sit down. Yes, the Spurs are above them. Every game matters. You want the playoffs. I said at the beginning of the season, postseason would be gravy. I want this team to get together, learn what you got. It's game one. The number one reason I don't have a problem with it is because it was the unknown. You don't know. For 2 million people to step in and watch, for that energy to be like that, that's how important he is. You better make darn sure he's going to be around longer than one game. So I get it. To your point, maybe after that, they look at him. He wasn't sore after practice on Thursday to go, well, maybe we use the 4-minute spurts differently in the second half to where you can finish the third and finish the fourth. But again, you didn't know that. You didn't have anything before that.
Right.
It was unfortunate. If he goes 2 of those 4 threes, one of those 4 threes, we're not even having this conversation. The fact he had a moment where he knocked down those 4
he took
and
over
the
the
place
game.
went bananas and gave him the lead. That's when I think people got emotional and said, I mean, dude, people wanted to punch Gentry. They wanted to go after the guy on social media, seriously.
It was barely bad. It was bad. Chris, what's your take?
Yeah, look, that was incredible. It was an incredible moment. In my opinion, one of the top 5 moments that I've seen in there, and I've been in there for playoff games and some other stuff. But it was the pent-up energy that was let out because for months you've been waiting on Zion, and you finally get him, and he's a little turnover prone and sloppy at times, unable to find his rhythm. But I mean, you could feel it was ready to burst because he pulls down a rebound and people are screaming. It's like, it's just a rebound.
Right.
He skied for it, but it's just a rebound. And then all of a sudden that happens, and as media members, we are taught to be professional.
Absolutely.
And dude, I was on my feet like throwing up 3-point signs because as a sports fan in general, I don't care who you cheer for. You could be a Spurs fan, but you're like, this is awesome. If you were a Spurs fan in this building, you were like, this is a sports moment of Zion Williamson just absolutely exploding because for 3 quarters, you could have fallen asleep in there. And then all of a sudden, it is incredible. And it was incredible that the Pelicans were even still in that game. They shot so poorly throughout it. So, yeah, I get it. The emotions take over, and you want them to be back out there. I'm probably more level-headed than most because I'm a media member, and it's kind of what's drilled into us at a certain point. So
You lose your fandom.
in that moment, I was like, that was awesome. He could sit the rest of the game. I feel like every moment of misery leading up to it was totally worth it. That was really cool to witness, and I can understand him sitting out. I understand why fans don't feel that way because they want to win the game. They just want more. Like, you're going to get this guy for 30-plus more games this year, and ideally for a long time to come. So there is going to be more, and I think that is where the level-headedness has to come in of the Pelicans, where they say, look, it took so long to get him on the court. We can't risk losing him, like Gus said. Second of all, I think it is part of the PR issue of the whole matter and the fact that you are being told, and you've been told for years with Anthony Davis, you can't take care of stars. The medical staff can't do it.
Right.
This and that. And they now have the chance to prove to the city, to themselves, to the NBA world, to the sports world, that they are capable of housing a superstar, capable of keeping a superstar healthy when no one else thinks you can. This is the first part of it, and keyword first part. There's a lot more of Zion to come, and I think that's where you kind of rein it in and say, okay, did they lose the game? Yes. Are they still do they still have a good chance to make the playoffs? I think yes. It's one of 82 games, and I know you can only say that so many times before those losses start to stack up, and maybe in the end, 13 straight losses bites them in the butt. But in the scheme of last night, I do think they learned about Zion. Those guys will learn each other. His minutes will expand. Everyone will be happy because he will play longer than 4-minute stretches. He will be healthy for longer than 4-minute stretches, and fans will get to see him for longer than 3 and 4 minute stretches.
I was going to say, and you got the Spurs 3 more times. You got Memphis 3 more times. You can make up games with those. And I thought it wasn't coincidental, wasn't it, guys, that Drew Holiday was sent up to the podium with them?
It was by design.
And it was such a big brother thing. It reminded me almost of Kamara and Ingram, too, Ted. I thought one of the signature moments in the post-game presser was when a question to Zion was, are you ready to get back to normalcy? And Zion goes, and right before he answered, Drew cuts him off and goes, fam, this is your new norm. This is normal, and we're here for you. I thought that was a special moment. I play that over and over because, remember, we started out the Griffin era of him saying this is Drew Holiday's team. This is all about Drew Holiday. Now we all know it's about Zion.
Of course.
But
it's always going to be about Zion.
That is why he's so important, Drew. He was calm. He's like, we got you. And then at practice on Thursday, they're having a shooting competition. Brandon Ingram's trying to shoot. Lonzo Ball is screaming to him, we want Zion. But that just shows you what that locker room is all about. It's almost been a blessing of disguise. I'm with you, man. Believe me, because when the timeout was taken, I'm like, oh, they're taking him out. I'm like, because you want to see, can he hit 5? No way can he hit 5.
I didn't have a problem with him taking him out there. I would have liked to have seen, again, as I mentioned,
come back,
take him to the bench, have the medical staff talk to him. You're all obviously fatigued the way as hard as he's playing, and then again, get that emotion ramped up. Let him go back to the scores table. Maybe try to finish out the last 3 minutes of the game.
I think the other side of that, though, is when you do that, you shift the pressure firmly back to Zion. Like, you put him back in the game. It's like, okay, you got like 3 more threes in you. Cool, go hit those threes. And I think Zion's a rookie. Like, we see him as this physical beast, which he is, and a guy that can take over games, which he can. But in his mind, I think that will come naturally. He's still a 19-year-old. He's still a rookie, and you could see it last night. And they talked about it after the game. They had to push him a lot, and I predicted that. I said that on our overtime show a couple days ago, because he's a rookie and he's playing with guys that are older than him and more experience than him. It's in his first game. Like, he's going to defer a lot.
he did.
And so, yeah, he found it later in that game. I just don't know, putting him back in and putting the pressure on him to go make something happen, even though that's really what they needed because not many other people could get it done last night, would have been the best move. You could even see it. I mean, some of those threes he hit, Lonzo was giving him the ball, like, shoot it. And he gave it back to Lonzo one time. Lonzo like, no, seriously, shoot it. Right. There's no one on you. Yeah. And so they had to give him that push. I think that'll come a little bit more naturally, and then he will be comfortable if there's a moment where he physically can and medically can go back in the game and flourish.
A couple things. Look, from a transition standpoint, there's a transition. This team now has been playing together for a half a season, in and out, different lineups, but again, for the most part, your core, you know what they're doing. They finally have figured out what they're doing within this system as well. So you knew, again, that there would be a little bit of a transition period, and we saw that really in the first 3 quarters. I don't think you can force the issue. I think you have to do it organically. It's just kind of happen like it did in the fourth quarter. You look at the lineup that he was with in the fourth quarter, with a small lineup with him playing at the 5. The game, again, it opened up the lanes for him as well. A little bit more. Whereas before, if you got him in the game with Favors, you got Ingram in the game, that paint may be a little bit clogged. As far as the medical staff goes, look, I was the one that was out front on the medical staff since day one, the old medical staff, whether it was with the Saints or the Pelicans. Look, I'm not going to be critical of this medical staff. I was glad when they brought Aaron Nelson in, but I will say this: they have been overly cautious this season with again, everyone on that bench. Maybe that is to your point, Chris. So many years of, again, those of us in the media calling it like it is about how the medical staff was, misdiagnosing injuries, not having the right rehab for those injuries, and in a lot of cases, hurting players, or in some cases, and you're talking airline drive, ruining their careers. Okay, on the Saints side, gone, guys that were finished. But I do think that there could have been a little bit of flexibility. The 4-minute spurts, and I want to go back to that for a moment. Look, nobody's getting loose in 4 minutes, okay, especially coming in. Now, again, can that be reevaluated as of today? Especially no soreness? 6 minutes, okay? 7 minutes. Let the guy be able to operate a little bit with, again, an emphasis on, hey, fourth quarter, we might want to have you in the game in the fourth quarter to see if you can close out games for us. And then, of course, when also being able to play together, the ability for these guys, you got to get him on the floor a little bit longer so guys understand what their roles are going to be around him.
I think one of the beauties as well that you have with him, and it's remarkable, first that it's ever gotten was an assist. One of the highlights that Tim Legler and ESPN after the game highlighted on the Scott Van Pelt show, which I thought was remarkable too, is the rebound it shouldn't have been, right? Spurs, it was going to be a second chance point. It's going to be an offensive board. He skies high, grabs it over the Spurs player, dribbles near side. He's off and running. 2 steps before the center court line, he throws a bullet pass to the far side in the right corner that turns into an assist.
Yes.
He doesn't have to dominate the ball and score. He's a willing passer. He's an athlete that can impact the game by getting a rebound like that and getting you an extra possession. He can impact it by you feeding him the ball. The defense has to react. Chris, I know it's one game, but guess what Denver's going to think tomorrow if he's standing behind that three-point line?
Yeah.
Yes.
That guy, Jokic or something, they're going to take one step. That creates a little more space here. You're talking about playing with the different bigs. I still can't wait to see him and Jackson Hayes run up and down the court and do that. So the beauty of him is you've seen, and again, I always use this phrase on our show, it's called body of work. Look, did you watch Duke games? He can dominate a game, but he can do it by dishing.
Right.
He can do it by playing defense. He can do by so many things. I think that opens it up to the transition being a lot easier. So you go to body of work again, and Chris, the 5 preseason games that he had the team lead in points, the team lead in minutes, but he also did it in a way that I didn't feel that it was forced.
No, and that's the beauty of him and the type of team he played with at Duke when he had guys like R.J. Barrett and Cam Reddish on the team.
He was already ready.
He was already ready to play with guys who like to shoot in volume, and so he's really good at feeling the flow of the game. I think, to your point, maybe that is part of the issue when you only play him 4 minutes. He doesn't really get into that flow and kind of feel guys out, but at the same time, I don't know if this is a good analogy, but at some point it felt like if he's struggling and they're losing and nobody on the floor is knocking down shots, was it like that Sam Darnold game against the Patriots? Like, why is he still out there? And like, maybe sub him out, let him observe, feel the game from the bench for a second, and get him back in, so he gets a better feel of it, and maybe that would help. But again, I do think he can be special in terms of the way he distributes the ball and the way he moves up and down the floor and just his presence. It is going to be a bit of a readjustment. The readjustment would have been a lot easier last night had the Pelicans been able to knock down shots.
Yeah. Yes.
Had Josh Hart and Etuan Moore and Brandon Ingram been able to knock down some of those. Ingram just had an off game.
Right.
It was unfortunate it came that night because it was weird. I felt like a better team than the Spurs would have been beating the Pelicans by 20 at some point in that game. But if the Pelicans were playing if they even had an average night shooting the three, they're probably up on the Spurs by 10 at some point in that third or fourth quarter.
Right.
So it was an off game, but the excitement of Zion created a fun moment. I think things kind of level out. Like, do I expect Zion to go out and hit 4 threes next time? No. But if he's playing in a 6 or 7 minute stretch, I expect him to have more of an impact in different areas of the game.
And I'll be honest with you, I don't want him out there shooting 4 threes, okay? I mean, it's nice
if
when
they
you
give it to him.
Right. But if it's wide open, again, but at the same time, a lot of the Pelicans' threes are wide open. Teams don't have a real issue with them. I want to see, again, him in the paint and what he does around the basket. Another reason why, again, I really wanted to just see this game, to win this game last night for the Pelicans was because you've lost 13 straight. And when you lose 13 straight in a season, you're constantly trying to dig yourself out of that hole. Every single game from this point forward is precious. Okay, there are no nights to take off anymore. There are no quarters to take off anymore. You did that in the beginning of the season, that you dug this hole in. Now, miraculously, when you talk about what they've done over the last 17 games, they're digging themselves out of it. That is a division opponent. That's an opponent that again, is vying for the same seed that you're vying for. And it was an opportunity, again, for the fans, in front of the fans, to be able to win a game, especially after, again, what they've had to deal with all season long with really not good basketball consistently throughout the first part of the season. So, look, I get it. There's 37 games left?
Yep.
Okay, and there's some chance to be able to make up the situation. But I also think that, as I mentioned on social media, as I mentioned on my radio show this morning, you have to coach for the moment. And I get what's going on with the medical staff and with Griff. I just thought there should have been a little bit of flexibility. On the other hand, there have been some that have said, look, if you got a plan, you got to stick to the plan, right? It's the plan. But I would have been a little bit more flexible down the stretch there to try to win this game. Not just because it was Zion's first game, because, again, you have put yourself in a position now where you need every win you can get.
You, and that's why I brought up, though, you still have 3 against Memphis, 3 against San Antonio. The other thing is Drew Holiday, again, which is why I say there's no coincidence you put him on that podium. One of the things he said is we have 35 games left to do it. And at the end of the point, like Chris said, he subbed out, and you brought it up, 5:34 in the fourth quarter. You were up 1.
Yeah.
You weren't down 1. You got to win that game on you.
Right.
And they just didn't play well that night.
They did.
Which is, something that happens. But I think when you look at that schedule and you look at where they're going to be, and it's interesting because I can hear it in your voice with a lot of our callers too. The expectation levels are like, you better make the playoffs, which is remarkable. Right. And I like that because, again, I just referenced it earlier in the show. A year ago, we were told deuces. We were told you're not good enough, and we thought we didn't know who was going to run the organization, what the draft picks are going to be, what was the draft haul was going to be, and yet less than a year later, we have people wanting to punch the coach because he sacked Zion, and the expectation levels to playoffs, which I love because that just goes to show you how excited the area is and where they think this team can go. You wouldn't think there'd be a playoff team if you wouldn't have seen games this season that makes you think they're a playoff.
No, but again, I will say this, and I want to go to Chris. The expectation was set by David Griffin. David Griffin didn't say we're rebuilding and we're going to take a few years before we get in the playoffs, that we're rebuilding young. No, he said we're going to put together culture-driving veterans along with the core that we have here, along with what we got with the Lakers, along with this great draft class we brought in, and we're going to make a push for the playoffs. So again, at that point, I'm saying to myself, okay, that's the expectation, the A seed. Would they be better off possibly getting into the lottery and getting another great young player to go along, again, the core they have? Absolutely. But again, the expectation for this organization from the beginning was playoffs. Another part of this, you can't tell everyone in the city, you can't tell the media, if you're David Griffin, that there's no minute restriction when there is a minute restriction. I mean, again, he said it over and over again in every interview I heard, no, there's no minute restriction on Zion, but yet there was a minute restriction.
I think it was a lot of an eye test restriction or just an in-the-moment medical evaluation restriction. Like Gus said, I mean, you're up 1. You've got 5 other players that are on the floor that should have been able to go out and play well enough to win that game. So I don't love the idea of putting it all on Zion.
And I agree with you there. I would not put it on him.
At the same time, though, in terms of digging themselves out of the hole and the expectation, it's interesting because the expectation is constantly, I feel like it's constantly changing. Like, and a friend of mine asked me that today. Like, do I still think it's playoff or bust? I mean, the expectation to me and what I interpreted from Griffin was, yes, they're going to make a playoff push, but at the same time, like, the West is really good. Now, the West has actually turned out worse than we thought.
Right.
So that is why maybe the expectation is to be in the playoffs. But also you went 13 weeks without Zion, so that lowers the expectation. In those 13 weeks, you go on a 13-game losing streak. And so it's all of a sudden, like, when they lose 10, 11, 12 in a row at that point, you're probably like, it's looking more like bust in the playoff for bust scenario.
Sure.
Then they win 10 of 14, and you're like, oh, you know, odds makers have them at 61% or whatever it is to make the 8th seed because Zion's back and they're getting healthy. So the expectation's back to playoffs. And I think you've kind of got to let it run its course. We are so victim sometimes to trying to be in the moment that we get to the next moment and want to declare this or that. We want to declare Zion the greatest, or we want to declare him a bust. And there's nothing in between. We want to declare the Pelicans a playoff team or an absolute bust lottery team, and it's nothing in between. I think it's a team that's growing. I think it's a team that has room to grow. I think it's a team that at the top side of their potential has the ability to be the 8th seed in the playoffs, and that's at the top side of their potential. So I hope they get there, but I think especially for Zion, and I know it's a results-based business where you got to win, it's a tough line to toe in developing a player, keeping him healthy, developing a roster that clearly needs a little more development, at least with each other, when Zion's back initially, and getting into the playoffs. It's a tough job. I'm not excusing some of the games that Alvin Gentry's coached this year because they've been bad. I'm not excusing some of the nights where the team looked like they didn't have effort. But I think now they are in a pivotal time when they can take some steps forward, and I hope they do that.
Right. Your point to his.
Yeah, I think when you look at it from here on out, it's because we have 6 games, including Denver, left before the NBA trade deadline. Buyers, sellers, all the. I think you don't know what you have.
I thought that there were sellers up until this little bit of a
You
streak.
thought there were sellers?
I thought they were going to. I thought they were going to get rid of some veterans.
You see, the reason
Well,
but you don't know what you have with them.
Right.
You get what I'm getting at?
Yes.
It's the same argument that I have whether Gentry has coached a bad game or not. For the people that would call the show, and it's time to fire Gentry. He's the one that's holding them back. And I'm like, he's had one game this year of the starting 5 that he started the regular season with. One. Phil Jackson's going to have trouble doing that. I mean, Derek Favors is limping every time I see him. When he's healthy, he's incredible.
No, absolutely.
You don't think that matters when he's on there? Drew Holiday misses 7 games. Comes back, Ja Morant was killing the NBA. 3 points before half in that Memphis game. You don't think he matters? I mean, I need to see, before I can make an evaluation, him with the guys and the pieces that you have put together. Before I can say Redick's available in 6 games. Well, how important was he without shooting a shot when he walks into the locker room in Milwaukee and dresses down the team and says, it's time to play ball.
Culture driving veteran,
put your big boy pants on, right? Teams played better since then. When you're looking at a guy like Derek Favors, again, I mean, I can't put a value on what he means to your team defensively. And I just mentioned, yesterday you picked Drew Holiday to go sit with Zion Williamson after his first game.
Right.
Those are the 3 guys that people would want. Now, he tried more. They don't win some of those games 10 out of 14 without Uncle Lee doing it. So my point is, I get it's that time of the year and I got to look at it, but that's why I asked you, was your expectation that? At the beginning of the season for me was, can you be 5 games out with a month left? That means that entire season, your scoreboard watching at that point in the season, the home games matter. Most of your 15 games are at home. They're against winnable teams. And you're actually playing playoff basketball because you can't lose. Every possession matters. The arena is big. And that's still a learning experience because I think, to your point with David Griffin, he's also said that it's a process. It's going to take time to build that championship team.
No doubt about that.
Because I don't know what my pieces are going to be. And that 13-game losing streak put them back this year, but I think on the long-term scale was probably something that is going to help the franchise moving forward. You found a lot about people, a lot about those vets. You saw that Brandon Ingram said, give me the ball. You saw Lonzo Ball in that Utah game where Donovan Mitchell was smoking everybody, shoot Frank Jackson, smack the floor and say, I got it. He big boyed up when it came to that. Those are things that maybe don't happen if you're not tested. And I go back to the conversation I had with David Griffin I told you about when we first talked to him when we became the Pels flagship station. He wanted the first 10 games to be against the top 10 teams in the NBA and get their butts beat in. Because he specifically told me that's when you learn about people. So I don't know if you're sellers because I got to see what I have.
Well, and again, my point of being a seller was after, again, 13-game losing streak, guys not playing, guys quitting, guys not giving a full effort.
Well, agree with you.
All that,
if you don't think they belong here,
at that point,
deuces.
you know, either you're in or you're out. And then, of course, you got a young core here. Get those guys. If you're not going to have culture-driving veterans that are going to contribute, they're going to be going to play night after night for you, barring injury. Okay, then go young and build it through youth.
I agree, but since then, I think it's become more of a joint effort. And
Agreed.
I think the veterans and the youth are kind of meshing in a way that you saw happening. Obviously, when you get Drew and when you get Favors out there and they're healthy enough to go, it's a different team. And I mean, even in that regard, of the games that they won in this, before the Spurs game, the 10 out of 14 they won, they won a lot of those without Drew, and they won some of those without Favors, and so they've had to mess with a lot of different lineups and a lot of different things. And I'm sure there are some guys who, they go out there and they're like, all right, who are we starting tonight? Who am I playing with tonight? And it's just, you got game time decisions and guys having to go out. J.J. Redick being forced out of last night's game at one point. And so it's tough, and it's been a process. I hate to linger on that because we've been lingering on that literally for like 8 years now since Anthony Davis came. Like, we've been lingering on injuries for so long, but it's still a little bit of an issue. I'd love to see a healthy team, but I think they took the right steps, obviously, in my opinion, with Zion and keeping him healthy long term. You keep Drew healthy for a while. Favors, you don't know what can happen. I think it's all coming together, and it can come together. It's just going to take a little time.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Gus Kattengell, ESPN 100.3, Chris Hagan of Fox 8 Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We take a quick break to get a message from our underwriters. We'll be right back. We'll talk LSU Tigers. We'll talk New Orleans Saints. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports.
Air conditioning, heating, and refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhardt has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhardt's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhardt's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhardt's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. Our guests tonight are Chris Hagan of Fox 8 Sports and Gus Kattengell of ESPN 100.3. Guys, let's shift gears to the LSU Tigers, national champions. 42-25 winners over Clemson in the national championship game, 15-0. Consensus #1 team, defeated 7 of the top 10 teams, 7 top 10 teams this season. Of course, Burrow, his incredible run. Some are calling it the greatest season in the history of the 150 years of college football. All of us still kind of basking in the glow of it. Talk a bit about this LSU team this season, the redemption for Coach O. I mean, so many great storylines this year.
It's incredible, though, that week, right? I mean, you didn't even get to like Tuesday or Wednesday, and everyone was leaving and declaring because of the timetable and time frame. Obviously, in the past, it'd been different because the national championship was played a little bit earlier, so that's why it seemed like you had some time. But as far as what that season is, I've just been saying this, guys. Enjoy it. Enjoy it. Go buy the prints if you like. Buy the shirts and the hats. Just enjoy it and savor it and take it in. because that's not normal. You don't have players make such leaps and bounds from one season to another at multiple positions. You know, you go from a 4 or 5 round guy quarterback to the Heisman winner, #1 pick overall. Guy was incredible in Burrow. I mean, Jamar Chase was nice at Rummel. Did you think he was the Biletnikoff winner in 2 years? I mean, and the year before that, the entire LSU offense didn't look sort of like that. Let's be honest. When Clyde Edwards-Helaire became the guy last year, okay, it's nice back, but we weren't talking about him like a Fournette or something. Now you got Drew Brees saying, that's Mark Ingram in our offense. I mean, that's a huge compliment. That guy helped himself this year. And I would argue one of the reasons you beat Bama, his toughness and his attitude. And you could go up and down the line. 3,000-yard receivers, essentially, if Marshall's not hurt, that's 1,000 yards. You have an NFL back, essentially, a tight end that only caught 2 touchdown passes. I mean, I go on and on and on. That was just on the offensive side. Best defensive back. You got Stingley, who's ridiculous at corner. That just doesn't happen. You just bottle up, you put it on the wall somewhere and be like, I was there when I saw that team that year play, and move on. Because I don't know how you make that up again,
As an LSU graduate, how special was it for you?
Well, look, I think it should be a lesson to enjoying the journey, too, not just enjoying the end result, because the end result came, and then the next day, Joe Brady is reported to the Panthers.
Right.
And then the next day, Dave Aranda to Baylor. And your staff's being picked apart, and your players are declaring for the draft. And so some people said that might have been a sour taste at the end. I don't think so. Look, that was going to happen. I think Coach Orgeron's happy for the guys that go on to better jobs, and that shows the strength of his staff and the strength of LSU as a program. Right. But you've got to enjoy the journey. You've got to enjoy a win over Bama, which you haven't done in a long time. You've got to enjoy rivalry wins over a salty Florida team and over Auburn. Beating Texas in Austin was a lot of fun. Getting revenge against Texas A&M. Beating Georgia in the SEC Championship. All of these things, you've got to take all that in, because days after, there are already people, if you look at message boards and social media, that are like, what about next year? What are we going to do with all these players gone and coaches gone?
Moment.
Yeah.
Enjoy the moment. I hope you enjoyed the process getting there, because it doesn't happen often. I agree. It is the greatest single season for a quarterback. I think it's Joe Burrow and Cam Newton are 2 of the best that I have ever seen.
I agree.
And it's going to stay that way for a long time, in my opinion, because 60 touchdowns just doesn't happen.
Right. Let's talk about the defections. And you guys mentioned Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Sadiq Charles, Lloyd Cushenberry, Jacob Phillips, Patrick Queen, Grant Delpit, Justin Jefferson, Cavalon Chasson, Thad Moss. Of course, seniors that were leaving, Burrow, Fulton, Rashard Lawrence, Michael Divinity, Adrian McGee, Damian Lewis, Blake Ferguson. The returners, the players that are returning that could have left for the NFL, Tyler Shelvin, Jacoby Stevens, Glenn Logan, Kyrie Vincent, Austin Deckles, Neil Farrell, Ed Ingram. Obviously, again, when you're a great program, when you aspire to be one of the greatest programs in college football, you're going to lose juniors. You set yourself up, even said it. I expect my guys to be out of here in their junior year, paraphrasing here, because, again, that's the way the program is built. On the flip side, losing a Joe Brady, to Carolina as their offensive coordinator, and then, of course, losing Dave Aranda. Now you got 2 holes to fill within that coaching staff as well. Talk about the defections.
Yeah, I think what's interesting, too, is that kind of goes to a broader picture that we've been talking about. To be an elite program, right? If you want to be a consistent program that is trying to win national championships, you want to be, because right after the game ends, right, they're still on the field, confetti's still falling. What does ESPN ABC do? They put up on the prompter, or they put up on a screen already the odds for next year's national champion. And who are they? It's the same cast of characters. Right. It's Oklahoma, it's Clemson, it's Alabama, it's Georgia. Why? Well, because they've been able for the last several years to do something that LSU has yet to do. Every year they have what at Ohio State? A Heisman candidate. Every year, for the most part, Saban's had a Heisman candidate. Ohio State has them. Clemson has them. Every year. That's where LSU needs to get. That's why, to your point about enjoying the journey, it was nice that Joe Burrow could be a Heisman candidate. We were mid-season, we're going, this is a Heisman candidate, right? I mean, there were debates on the debate show going, could he be a candidate? A candidate. So LSU's got to find that ability to be able to either receiver, running back, defensive player that is a Heisman candidate. that tells you how good that sort of team is. It's interesting you bring up that O says that our program is going to be built with juniors leaving. At least you have an understanding. So you have your plan.
Right.
So you're ready and expecting that. And what we've seen in college football, to me, in the last 5 years, Bama wins a national championship with the freshman at quarterback. Clemson does with the freshman. Freshmen, sophomores are now expected to come in and make immediate impacts. It's no longer where we'll see them as juniors and seniors.
To your point about the teams that were they got the odds to win, with the exception of Alabama, okay, those teams have a much easier path to a national championship.
Right.
They do.
Clemson, even Georgia in the East, okay? Oklahoma, okay? LSU having to go through the SEC West is much more difficult as well. Your thoughts on the defections? It's something that again, we're going to see. And then I'd like you guys to morph into who is going to replace Dave Aranda at defensive coordinator and of course, the passing coordinator, Joe Brady. We heard today that George Munoz is going to join Dave Aranda at Baylor. So again, he's no longer going to be in line to be able to be moved up to the passing coordinator's job. What are your thoughts, Chris?
Yeah, and that's kind of one of my biggest concerns about the defections, because in terms of having the long-term success and the importance of having a quarterback like Burrow, or a quarterback that could lead the team like Burrow, I firmly believed, maybe still believe, that LSU, because of the way that their offense performed and the offense that they ran, had stepped up to another tier of quarterback. Like, when you have an attractive program and an attractive system like that, that's when you start to get the 5-star pro style, the 5-star dual threats, and the guys that can play like Burrow did or have that ceiling of potential or no ceiling of potential. But when Joe Brady leaves, like in my mind, I didn't think Joe Brady was going to be there long. I thought it'd be a little bit longer. Maybe get one more year out of him. Maybe find a way to eventually have him become the full-time offensive coordinator, if that's what it took. Because I think Brady, because of the way his face and name was attached to the offense, I thought that was going to be big for recruiting and getting that next level of quarterback. So that's going to be tough to fill. And then, of the defections you mentioned, the ones that have to be the scariest aren't the skill positions. It's the offensive linemen. When you talk about Sadiq Charles and Lloyd Cushenberry, you talk about Adrian McGee and Damian Lewis. I mean, these are guys that played such a pivotal role. I mean, the reason that it was the perfect storm and we all described it as such for LSU is because the skill positions were always there. Like Jamar Chase and his talent were there. Justin Jefferson and his talent were there. But what wasn't there was the ability to block and get a pass off or running lanes and holes for the running back.
Not having to keep the tight end on.
That's how you beat Alabama, is by controlling the line of scrimmage. I think LSU on the defensive line with Glenn Logan and Neil Farrell and Tyler Shelvin back, I think they are good on that front. But as far as an offensive line, whether it's Miles Brennan or whoever is at quarterback next year, you are going to have to step up on that offensive line and keep that unit as productive to keep your offense as productive. That's where it all starts. So that's going to be big in terms of finding a defensive coordinator. I would hope it's someone that comes in running a 3-4 scheme and can kind of take advantage of that personnel that I just mentioned and a lot of the personnel that LSU's built for. I don't think you can exactly copy what Dave Aranda's done because he's been very innovative, and one of the things that makes him such an attractive coordinator and coach is because so many guys, John Chavis, for example, who really hasn't had any success after leaving LSU, struggled to keep up with the development of the spread offense and how to defend it. And Dave Aranda has done a good job of not only keeping a defense that's been good against the run, but having a defense with speed and employing it in the right ways and moving guys like Chase on, Jacoby Stevens, Grant Delpitz around to defend the spread offense. And so that's going to be the challenge of taking advantage of that personnel that LSU has on the defensive side of the ball and keeping that rolling, because Dave Aranda, for all of the crap he took this year about some bad games and 38 points to Vandy and a lot of points to Texas, like they played really, really well in the games that mattered. They kept LSU in that national championship game long enough for the offense to catch up, so it's not going to be easy to replace.
Do they elevate from within? Are they going out? I will say this, and I said this on both shows. I do think Ed Ogeron, again, I guess, continues to evolve as a coach, but I also think that he would like to be able to bring in someone that he has a relationship with, someone he trusts. I think the Matt Canada experiment really put him in a position where he's going to get his guy, guys that he feels comfortable with, no matter whether that's going to be from within or someone that he's coached with previously or someone that, again, he's been around previously.
the involvement of Coach O, I think, has been just as spectacular as what you've seen over at LSU.
Amazing.
Again, you go back to the meeting with Valiva and Canada and O to, can we all just get along? I mean, that's incredible. And then to the point where you were sitting there most of the time that season wondering, is he going to be around at the end of this year? And you go from that to crediting him for, I don't know how, but how do you find Joe Brady? I mean, by the way Sean Payton talked about him, Drew Brees, is that the dude that's bringing me my Dunkin' Donuts?
Right.
I mean,
he was a nobody.
Seriously.
Say it.
So,
And
and
he
then
was.
he comes in and becomes this guru of offense. So, however,
But is
that
it the
name-
system that again, or is it
Again,
Joe Brady?
But regardless, it was that person.
Right.
So how did he find him? And that's what I'm saying, because not only that, but you hear the story of how he looked at it and said, look, Dave Aranda is one of the best coaches out there. Let's go get him and things of that nature. So I think what's interesting to me is, because there hadn't been many leaks, in terms of how that goes. And you have to imagine not only the UNLV thing situation earlier this year, but last year with Aranda, same thing. At least on that side of the football, I can't imagine that guy doesn't have on his phone already in his notes app a list. I mean,
a working list that he's
he has a list, right? I mean, you got to imagine he has a list. And it's interesting. Do you go from within? Do you go NFL? Do you go college football? And where you look at it, you're looking at it that way in terms of the teams you're going to play. I think part of the thought process now is, too, I got Leach and I got Kiffin now coming into the SEC West. What are they going to do? Throw the ball everywhere. So it's, I'm going to have players. I'm going to be able to bring in players. So it's going to be an attractive position. So I'm probably looking at it, a defensive coordinator that also I've got to think, too, do I want to keep doing this every 2-3 years? Do I want a guy who's going to be here 3 to 5 years? It's a big difference, I think. 2 to 3 means you're going to be asked like Joe Brady, or do I keep a guy that's 3 to 5 and more than likely 2 to 4? Same thing on the offensive side. Do you go get a young passing coordinator again? Do you go do that, or do you go, hey, Ensminger, we have his playbook.
Right,
we know what to do. Let's just roll that way.
Or again, look to the Saints once again and try to be able to get someone.
I thought either with the Saints or San Francisco.
Right.
I love what Shanahan's been able to do, run or pass and things of that nature.
It's tough in that regard, because when you looked at Joe Brady's resume when he came in, you would certainly say, like, even if you asked the middle of the year, you'd probably say, yeah, he'll be here another year or two. But in today's college football and NFL, it is they're very quick to go after their guys. It didn't take long for Sean McVay to get a job coaching the Rams, and then it didn't take long for Zach Taylor to come from the Sean McVay system and go to the Bengals. And guys move up the ranks very quickly. It's not anything new. I mean, even Dennis Allen's first venture into head coaching was from Saints to Broncos to coordinator, and then to Raiders as a head coach very, very quickly. And so it's hard to hang on to guys, but I do think with Orgeron's history of his resume and the coaches he's worked with, whether it's Pete Carroll or whoever in these different spots, he's got contacts, and I think there are a lot of football minds out there that he would like to tap into. And the progression of Coach O, from everything you read now especially, is just he is a forward thinker, and he doesn't want the guy who's got a great reputation so much as the guy who is thinking of how to better what they have, or what's next, what's the next development on this side of the ball, or whatever it may be.
Guys, let's shift gears to the Saints. I guess we could go back and do a postmortem on the season, but that's been done over and over again. Let's talk next year. Let's talk about what this team needs, how active you think they're going to be in free agency. Is it going to be a team that now is going to be this time around with what we assume to be Breeze's last year or second to last year in the league? We assume he'll come back. If they're going to try to be able to do like they did a few years ago, where they say, okay, we're all in. We're going to try to go out and get a few key veterans at key positions to try to get us over the top to win the Super Bowl. Or based on what Jeff Ireland has been able to do in terms of drafting, again, where they've had consecutive drafts that have been absolutely, really have turned the tide of this team, which was a 7-9 team before Ireland came on board. Are they going to be, again, methodical and go through the draft and continue to build for the future with Drew Brees here, and then try to re-sign their own core? Where do you think they go?
It's a pretty big offseason.
It's huge offseason.
To be honest with you,
it really is.
I don't know if, and again, it was so much going on. Obviously, I think with LSU's national championship,
Right.
return of the imminent return of Zion, and quite honestly, I think it's just fatigue of an early or a playoff loss that's really kind of
It's
hindered
disappointing.
it. But I think it's as important an offseason for Sean Payton since he's been here.
No doubt.
We don't know who the quarterback's going to be, and regardless, I think we all are in agreement the best option for next year is Drew Brees. But we do see Father Time around the corner. He sees Father Time around the corner.
Right.
This isn't sacrilege. This isn't being ugly. He no longer can beat you with his arm.
That's right.
He can
Not
still
deep for
win
sure.
you games, though. That's a big difference. So he can still win me games. We saw this year, 29 of 30. The guy can still be deadly accurate. But I need yackers. I need yards after the catch playmakers that you've been pushing off for 2 years. You also probably made a decision or two that, like a Willie, I think you could have used a Willie Snead
there's no
type
doubt.
receiver
No
that
doubt.
didn't cost you much, but you didn't sign for a while. A tinkering of philosophy. I think the Saints need to run the ball a little bit more to help him out. But that means, what do I do with my line, right? Armstead can't stay healthy. Andres Pete, big decision there, right? What do I do there? Do I move Ramczyk, who doesn't give up sacks in the regular season, to my left tackle?
right.
See what? These are big decisions to make. We hadn't even gotten to what do we do with 41. He was a question mark this year. I don't know what happened to him, where he went. What if he, by all indications I get, and I don't know if you guys feel too, I think he's going to hold out. I think he wants a contract. And what if he says 10 to 15? Is that what you're doing?
No, they're not doing
So, but again, so that's huge because he is your playmaker. If Taysom Hill is a guy that you want to develop at quarterback, I just took away another weapon on offense. So, man, you really have to figure out what you're doing there. We hadn't even got to Lattimore, who wants something probably coming up soon.
But you knew all
What do
this
we
was
do?
coming.
I agree,
And
but
that's
that's
why
what I'm
it's
saying.
a-
That's why it's such a pain in the butt that you lost
it's-
back-to-back 13
Oh, no doubt.
seasons.
It's a big offseason, but it's a different type of offseason because 2016's draft turned out to be a strong draft, obviously, with Michael Thomas and Von Bell. And
Yes.
then you've got the 2017 class, obviously, with Lattimore and Ramczyk and Marcus Williams and Alvin Kamara. But these were draft classes of the past that are now, like Gus said, these contracts are going to start to expire. So in years past, where you had this really strong group of young guys, and you took a lot of them. I mean, you had a lot of picks there that really panned out well, and you were able to just kind of, they addressed the linebackers really through free agency. They drafted Alex Anzalone. He's really only had 1 full year, but they were able to add A.J. Klein, who was a big part of that culture, add Demario Davis, who has been everything and more that they could expect, and plug in some other places. But now all of a sudden, I think it kind of shifts back to they need to draft well again. And last year was a great example of quality over quantity. They gave up picks in order to get Eric McCoy, panned out well. C.J. Gardner-Johnson panned out really well, trading up to get him. But now all of a sudden you're in a situation where you've got to use these picks, and I think you've got to use them well because you're going to have to replenish, and you're not going to be able to replenish money-wise with as many big-name free agents or spend as much money maybe because you're going to have to all of a sudden commit money again to Drew Brees, and that's a contract that is going to be extended down the road a little bit in order to make room for it. So I don't know if free agency is going to be the ultimate answer. It'll be interesting to see what they attack in the draft. We've been calling for a second receiver for years. The disappointing part to me, the way the season ended, not to get too post-mortem, but it was just the fact that Jared Cook became that second
Yeah, he
receiver.
did.
Like he was going to be the guy, and then against the Vikings, he's screaming for the ball and is not getting it until the fourth quarter. And in a way, it's what cost him because they locked up
One
Michael
catch
Thomas.
before the fourth, man.
Crazy. When you look at Brees, and a lot of people talk about this, $21 million in dead money, hometown discount of some kind here. I mean, if he truly wants to try to win one more Super Bowl, at that point, you've made a tremendous amount of money. Nobody's asking you to play for free. But do you have to maybe give a little bit back here, like Tom Brady did, to try to keep this thing going?
My response to that is, what is a hometown discount? If the going rate's 30 for an elite,
Right.
okay, good starter,
Is he
solid
elite?
starter, I think he's close to elite.
Okay.
I mean, now elite to me if we go in there, that's Mahomes, that's Lamar. Those are guys that can beat you by themselves. And I just finished saying he's not there anymore.
Okay, right.
So he made 25. Is he there? He's not below 20.
There's no way. I get that.
He's not below 20.
Right.
I mean, there's teams right now that would absolutely sign him for
come on.
20 and have him go
There's
help
teams
him
out there
win
with
games.
signing for 30.
Because I'm just saying, the reason I went into this because I heard someone say he needs a hometown discount about 10. I'm like, Kamara wants 15 or something. I mean,
That's crazy. Nobody's playing for that.
But that's what I'm getting at. So a hometown discount
He's already been giving the hometown.
is what?
he has.
Not 30.
Right.
It's not 25. Is it 22? Is that a hometown
Because
discount?
you still got to account for that $21 million in dead money.
Yeah.
Which, again, has been amortized
Right.
over the life of the deal, which means any deal you do with them is going to be at least a 3-year deal. Or, maybe, again, so you can spread that money out and take that hit on the back end. And then you got to hope that the next quarterback is going to be a young quarterback that, again, that you can absorb some of that money so you're not getting crushed in that final year. Your thoughts on Breeze? We got about 2 minutes left.
It's tough, man. I mean, it's delaying the inevitable in a way, but you keep passing on these opportunities that maybe at some point you wanted to take. Like they weren't able to take their shot and get Mahomes. They weren't able to take their shot and get Jimmy Garoppolo, 2 quarterbacks that I think Sean Payton liked a lot. Those guys are in Super Bowl, playing in a Super Bowl.
Which shows he's got eye for quarterback talent.
He does. It just keeps coming back to, and I hope I'm wrong, but like it just feels like did they miss the window? I mean, you should have won one by now.
Yeah. Right.
And you can make that argument for any quarterback, and you look at the number of rings that Russell Wilson has, and Drew Brees has, and Aaron Rodgers has, and a number of others. You could all say they should have more.
Yes.
Well, they all played in the Tom Brady era, so they don't have more. And it's a tough decision to make. If you're the Saints, I do think Breeze keeps giving you the best chance to win, but it's getting like a tougher crutch to lean on because eventually, if you don't win it, then you're in a really tough spot for the future.
No doubt. Final word, got about 35 seconds.
The phrase wasted opportunities keeps coming up. Look, it's going to be a discussion that no one wants to have, but eventually, you know all these shows that do it all the time. They were discussing Eli Manning, is he a Hall of Famer or not? If they don't win another one, I mean, it's...
Well, if they don't win another
they have
underachieved.
I
Certainly.
would say.
I think they've already underachieved.
They have underachieved.
I agree.
I mean, there's no doubt. When you look at the number of Super Bowl
You cannot
teams
lose the
they
first
had,
playoff game this year.
Period. They've underachieved.
I went off on them today, and not being ugly and quick and be quick. That 11 guys on a Pro Bowl.
Right.
How many do you have at one time on the field? 11. That 11 guys in a Pro Bowl couldn't win a playoff game.
No. Yeah. Look. To everyone's point, it's the truth.
Right.
And look, too many teams that had the ability to be the best in the league, and they didn't make it. You can make it for a myriad of reasons: lack of defense, lack of running the football like the last one. Again, just some bad luck with the Minnesota Miracle, whatever it is. You got one.
Yeah.
You got one with a Hall of Fame quarterback, first ballot. Now, again, it is a team that has been great in the regular season, but has underachieved in the postseason. Gus Kattengell, ESPN 100.3, Chris Hagan of Fox 8 Sports. Thanks for being on our panel tonight. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE-TV at 10 p.m. Also, statewide, Pelican Sports Television, that's 9 o'clock every Friday. You can catch me on the radio, Sports 1280, 101.1 FM HD2, and the iHeartRadio app. Listen live, download the podcast at ericasher.com. All the previous episodes of this show can be seen at ericasher.com. Also, the WLAE-TV YouTube channel, and I post it on my social media platforms as well. Again, special thanks to Gus and also Chris, also to our fantastic underwriters. Thanks so much for, again, supporting this program, as well as to the WLE production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Naila Jones, Richard King, Alice Chacon, and my director, William Hill. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.